and welcome to Indian Standard Time. I'm Siddharth Varadarajan, and my guest today on the show is Ibone Bengoetxea, Deputy Mayor of the Spanish city of Bilbao, a city that in many ways has become a metaphor globally for urban regeneration. Ibone, welcome to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you very much. Hello.
It's unusual that we spend half an hour on just one city in this program, but I think what has happened in Bilbao over the last 2 decades is such a miraculous transformation that the lessons from this ongoing experiment, I think hold immense value and fascination for Indian viewers. Give our viewers a sense of where Bilbao was 20, 25 years ago, when this whole idea of regenerating the city took hold.
Okay, we must go back to the 80s, so previously maybe to the 70s. The city was an industrial city with a lot of people coming from abroad and from other regions of Spain to work. The main industry was iron, steel and ship factories. With the bigger crisis of the iron, steel and the shipping factories, there were a lot of closings of those factories, a lot of unemployment. The city was cracked down. There were social problems. The big development of the city in the times of in good times had made some neighborhoods not so well developed, not very well built. Then there were drugs. The terrorist band ETA was just in its hardest moment. And besides all of that, in 1893, the city suffered very, very, very strong floodings, which destroyed most part of the city. So it was like a collective depression.
Right.
I mean, it was high rates of unemployment, up to 28%. Social cohesion was broken, and the city had to reinvent itself. I mean, it was a need because we couldn't stand for much more in that situation.
So as a coastal city that at one point had seen a flourishing port, central to a lot of Spanish trade, for example, by the end of the 70s, early 80s, the port facilities themselves or the centrality of shipping had come into decline?
Yeah, everything went bad,
right,
because we weren't competitive in the global world. Those factories were not competitive, so people was fired, and the result was that we had to change a mindset,
right,
to create a new future,
right,
for the city.
Right. We'll come to the transformation in a second, but just to underline for our viewers, Bilbao is the largest city in the Basque region.
Yeah.
In many ways, a region that has been politically unsettled. It saw acts of terror back in the 70s and 80s, perhaps earlier. Its industrial base had come into decline, and by the end of the 70s, early 80s, we are looking at an urban disaster. Would that be too strong a word?
Yeah, it was an urban disaster. It was an environmental disaster.
Okay.
It was even a social disaster. It was a collective depression. I mean, everyone was like
so high unemployment rates, high crime rates, poor environment,
yeah,
lousy housing.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, I was a teenager in that period, so I can remember it quite well.
Right. So sort of a walking example of an urban disaster.
Yeah.
So what happened then? I mean, how does the story take a turn for the better?
The story begins with a need. I mean, and it begins with leadership. I mean, someone took a decision, and the decision was to begin with a change.
So this was leadership within the city or within the Basque region or in Spain at the national level?
Good leadership is always shared. I mean, you need people who lead, but those people must know how to manage with other people. So the city mayor and the city team lead this change, but also the Biscay government and the Basque country's government lead this change, and also the Spanish government helped to have this change made. So there was a big commitment, a political commitment. I mean, for a project to be done, you need the technical viability. I mean, you must draw something and that works. Then you must have the money, and then you must have the political viability. I mean, you must get people with you in the project. And in that moment, the most important decision that was taken was to change the traditional industry we were having that wasn't working into a knowledge-based economy.
So the old traditional industry, so steel, shipping, to move away from that, which was anyway in decline. Well, in India, we're familiar with crises becoming an occasion for governments to change policy. There comes a time when you hit rock bottom. In India, 1990-91, huge foreign exchange crisis, which led to the government of the day deciding to open up the economy. What was the urban equivalent? What was the equivalent of that rock bottom when it comes to Bilbao? Was that one moment when leaders at the city level, at the provincial level said, look, enough's enough, we have to reinvent ourselves? Was it the floods?
It was after the floods.
Okay.
Because everything was broken. I mean, but apparently the city was going on. But inside, there was a big hurt. Right. And the floodings made that hurt appear. I mean, a lot of people lost the shops, the restaurants, the flats, the cars. So that was like a catalyzer of the change, and the transformation began. We usually call it the urban transformation, but in fact it has been an urban and also social transformation. Okay. I mean, we can see the urban changes, you can touch them, they're tangible, but there have also been intangible changes, which are social changes. Changes in the mindset of the people and of the professional sectors in the city and in the metropolitan area.
How important was regional autonomy for Bilbao and the Basque country, the autonomous region, in creating an environment that allowed the city and its leaders to reinvent themselves?
It was one of the key factors, but not only that. In fact, the Basque country has a special agreement with the Spanish government, from which we're quite autonomous with the taxes we collect, right. And we maintain them, we keep them, and we invest them, and we use them for the policy we want. Yeah. So we're quite autonomous. But it was not only one of the key factors. I mean, you can have the money, but it was also the type of economy we had. Consider that the average GDP of the Basque region is 130 over the 100% of the average of the European Union. And that was because our economy was based on industry, because Bilbao was an industry city in an industrialized region. And now we are not being an industry city, but we are a city in an industry region. I mean, we need industry. So the percentage of the industry and the services in the GDP is much bigger than the one of the construction and tourism. So it's quite stable and quite well based. And that industry is also diversified and in sectors in which we know that we are competitive. So it's the autonomous economy, but also the type of economy we have.
Right. Let's try to break down the changes that were introduced over 2 or 3 decades into the environmental aspect, the urban transportation aspect, the external accessibility aspect, and of course the one signature project for which Bilbao is world famous, which was that beautiful architecture that has gone into the Guggenheim Museum, yeah, that people in India and all over the world are familiar with. And let's start with the environmental initiatives. The river, the Nervion, was terribly polluted, brown. I've seen photographs of the way it used to be 30 years ago. Yeah. How did the city evolve a plan to replenish and rejuvenate this important river?
First, let me tell you that there were many projects, but there was one vision, and that's important, because if I explain, it was the river, it was the culture, it was I don't know what. Okay. Things don't work like that. I mean, we had like one vision, one holistic approach, and then of course, then there are some axes in which you can work, and one of them was the environmental problem. The river had 0% of oxygen, and it's quite close to the sea. I mean, it's maybe 15 kilometers to the sea. So Bilbao city leads a consortium.
So there was no life in the river in terms of...
0% of oxygen. And now we have some fishes, so you can see people enjoying it. Bilbao leads a consortium of the municipality of Bilbao and many municipalities around the city. And all of them share the costs and the incomes of managing the water supply for all the houses. So the Basque region took the decision not to let some industries to throw the chemics and the waste to the river, but all the people living in those areas with a special small tax added to the tax they paid for the water supply, cleaned the river. And nowadays, if you ask people from metropolitan area or even from Bilbao if they feel proud about what work, okay, they say the metro, of course, because that solved a lot of problems. But the other one they say usually is the cleanliness of the river.
So you essentially eliminated all industrial effluents?
Yeah.
Untreated effluents going to the river were eliminated? Yeah. How long did that process take?
I would say maybe 15 years. Till now that it's all... But you can appreciate quite quickly. I mean, you can see how the river changes from blackish brown to light brown to bluish brown and then to greenish blue and then it is.
And of course aquatic life increases as you go along, recreational activities happen.
Because it's a river which finishes in the sea, so the water flow which goes and enters, so some fishes from the sea enter and others go. Yeah, right. You can see sea life.
You mentioned the vision, and I think that's important. Often in India, when we speak of urban planning, or when we look at the manner in which urban planning and urban construction takes place, many government departments tend to operate in silos. Mm-hmm. So you have a slum rehabilitation wing, which doesn't necessarily talk to the urban transportation people. So you can have housing for poor people created in a part of the city that is not connected to public transport. Mm-hmm. I think the way in which Bilbao went about formulating its vision is interesting, is important. The Bilbao Metropole 30, for example, or other, the private public, who put these initiatives together? How did they function so that the voices of all stakeholders in the city were heard and were given equal weight?
We did the traditional way. We used to do that way. I mean, each department went by to its space, and then there wasn't a project. But we realized that it was going to be good to have one unique vision. And that vision is long-term, medium-term, and daily basis, because you must give answers to the three stages. For the long-term basis, we had a special advisory committee with the stakeholders, with the academia, the university, with professional sectors, with the Institute of Competitiveness, who help us to make the future of the city, maybe 15, 25 years from now. Then, from the medium term, we've got another special committee with some of those people, but other more real people. I mean, people from NGOs, associations of neighborhoods, and so on, and sectors, disabled, gender, age, so they are young, they are elderly people, and then we evaluate the future and then take measures for the medium term. And then on daily basis, we've got some established tools to take the voice of the real people in the street. And those are two kinds of tools. One of them are informal. I mean, you can have an informal encounter with people and then listen directly to them. And and part of them are formal. They are structured and they have an administrative structure.
Right. So from where did the idea for the Guggenheim spring from? This is the signature building that Bilbao is so proud of today and which attracts more than 1 million visitors every year. How did that happen?
You want the truth?
Absolutely, nothing but the truth.
I think there was a bit of luck. I mean, the Guggenheim Foundation was looking for a settlement in Europe, and the settlement they were wanting, said them no.
What was their first choice?
I think they wanted in North Korea and also in Italy.
Okay.
So they were refused twice.
So somebody said no to them twice.
So we were looking for something to help us to make that change of mindset.
So you were already clear that as a city you wanted some kind of a signature project, some kind of a high prestige project?
Yeah. It was not high prestige. It was something that could help to recover the collective illusion, because you need collective illusion to go through the difficulties, and something that was going to be sustainable in the time. I mean, it was not just creating a bigger sculpture or bigger architectural something and then that's all. The success was to be brave enough to take the decision. But there was also serendipity. I mean, there was also the opportunity or the lack, or we were able to offer.
Right. So who bore the brunt of the cost of this project? Was it Guggenheim themselves, or was it the city? Who paid for it? Yeah.
It was paid by the Basque country government and the Vizcay provincial government, and the municipality put the land.
And what would the ballpark figure be in terms of investment, the cost of investment?
It was 133 million euros.
And would you say, based on tourist arrivals and visitors to the city, you've more than recovered the cost?
Yeah, we have recovered them in less than 5 years. It was recovered because as we collect all the taxes, during the first years of opening, we recovered by direct taxes 47 million euros. So there is no other, company who could give so much profit.
And the choice of Frank Gehry as the architect, were there Spanish architects who said, oh, we should have got this? Were they Basque architects? Or
no, we thought that the museum was going to be special, so we opened an international competition, and he was the best choice. And in fact, he was the best choice.
That's marvelous.
Not only...
Exactly. There's a debate among urban planners that projects of this kind, it's called Boosterism, where you use one big project to somehow give a push to the city's economy, that these often don't work. Sometimes people, the citizens for whom this is intended, resent the amount of time and attention and money given to these projects. Now, we know that in the case of Bilbao, too, there was a lot of skepticism among the residents. How did you overcome that skepticism, their anger at the fact that this money, public money, was being spent on a project that they didn't see was necessarily
They thought that
valuable?
money was better to be given to the dying factories. But the leaders thought that was going to delay the dying of the factories. So in the real critical moments, leadership is shown when you are able to take a right decision.
Did it ever become an electoral issue, that people campaigning to stop it?
It came to electoral battle in local elections.
Yeah.
But I've told you before about the political viability. We had the support or the commitment of the Socialist Party in that moment in the Spanish government, that could be good for the...
And the city government was in the hands of the Basque Party.
Yeah.
Right. So so we had bipartisan support. But if the project had been put to a referendum in the early 90s,
maybe it could have gone no. Maybe.
Wow.
Yeah. But you've said that some cities try to boost a very big project to increase the economy. In the case of Bilbao, that's true, but that is not the only reason. I mean, the Guggenheim Museum is the icon that you can see, and you can say, yeah, it was because we made it. But there were many things done that the big shadow of the Guggenheim Museum overshadows all the things we've done. I mean, in terms of urban planning, in terms of urban space, in terms of public governance, in terms of transparency, in terms of, everything went better. I mean, there were physical changes, but there were also social changes.
Let's talk about urban transportation in the time that we have left. You built a metro.
Yeah.
It's attractive. It's admired. It's used by the people. Was that also a difficult project to execute, or was there public support? Were people willing to put up with the inconveniences that construction caused, and were car drivers willing to migrate?
It was a very difficult project to be executed because of the river and because it crosses the river maybe twice, right. And because of the kind of land we have there, but people were waiting for it.
How long did the construction
last?
Take?
I would say I was working in Basque Railways when it began, so maybe I would say 8 to 10 years. It has not been finished because then we are making it bigger, and now it's a bigger, a larger metropolitan area. Right. But the most important thing of the metro is that we consider that that metro wasn't going to be a metro for the poorest. It wasn't going to be a metro for people not being able to have a car.
Right.
It was going to be a metro in which you felt secure. I mean, usually when you go to any metro around the world, you feel that it's dirty, without lights, you feel like you're trapped. Yeah. And we wanted an open metro. We wanted a metro in which you felt secure, and we wanted a metro for work, but also for leisure, and also for opera. Why not?
So you were able to attract the middle classes or the urban elites to use the metro too.
Yeah.
Is the metro loss-making like many metro systems around the world?
Yeah, it's if you consider the investment, of course, but let the investment apart of the trains and so on. The cost coverage, or the ratio of the metro, should be maybe in 80–85%, and that means that one of the most cost coverage ratio all over Europe, at least.
Right. So, but there's still an element of public subsidy involved, I suppose.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And the price of the ticket is also subsidized, and I don't know, but elderly have a very special limited price, young people also, and all the money for the metro, it's a public service, so it's given by the Basque government.
Yeah. I looked at the statistics in preparing for this interview. Before Bilbao began its reinvention, tourist arrivals were something like 30 or 40,000 per annum. Is there a figure of the number of tourists who come to Bilbao today?
Yeah.
Annual figure?
It's 1,040,000.
1.4 million.
Yeah, that's the point. That's
the point. Yeah. That's a very impressive turnaround. It's no wonder that the mayor of Bilbao won the best mayor of the world award a couple of years ago.
Yeah, in London.
Is there much jealousy among other Spanish cities that Bilbao has somehow begun to outshine? I mean, Barcelona, Madrid, every place is famous. But
no,
Bilbao,
I don't think there's jealousy because we consider that we can learn from others, and I think we're being quite generous with our projects and with the projects of others. So we are receiving a lot of visits in which we learn from each other, and the same as we have come now here for offer our vision, we have also learned from what we've seen here. So I don't think other cities are feeling jealous. They are wanting to collaborate and to work together with us. Before we finish, there must be some unfinished business as well as part of this 30-year project. What's next on the agenda in Bilbao in terms of urban renewal? Oh, we are waiting for the high-speed train. Okay. And then the city is in a hole. That's to connect Bilbao and Madrid? And with Europe. Okay. Yeah. Well, we're always looking to the north of Europe. Okay. So it will connect us, of course, with Madrid and with Seville, but also with Europe. Right. And then, as I was telling, the city is in a hole, and there is a new area of opportunity, the last one that remains there, and the architect Zaha Hadid will develop it, but it's very special because we are converting a peninsula in an island, and then we are trying to maintain the old houses restored, right, and people living there, but create a new neighborhood with a very awarded architect. And it will be like a compact city in which you will have leisure, clean industries, a technological part, university, and common people, ordinary people. Right. That sounds exciting. Ibone Bengoetxea, thank you so much for joining us on Indian Standard Time. Thank you very much. That wraps up today's episode. If you do happen to visit Spain at some point in the next couple of years, Bilbao, I think, is definitely a destination that you have to take in. Do tune in next week, another guest. Keep watching RSTV.